Hi, this is Mark Gane from the band Martha and the Muffins, and you're listening to Nothing Shocking Podcast with Eric and Jeff.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking Podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studio is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking Podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking Podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Big Strix Vinyl Records and Sports Cards, located in Rock Island, Illinois. New, vintage, and previously owned. You can find it at Big Strix. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
award winner Mark Gane from Martha and the Muffins.
Yeah, promoting his latest album, Garden Music.
His first solo album.
Yes, his first solo album, inspired by plants in the garden. So, hey, let's get to that interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. Mark, welcome to the Nothing Shocking Podcast. I'd like to introduce to you my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Mark, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. Well, let's get right into it. This past May, May 1st of 2025, you released your first solo endeavor, Garden Music. Can you talk a little bit more about this instrumental solo endeavor?
Well, it was a long time coming to fruition. The actual project started probably at least 25 years ago when my partner and co-founder of Martha and Muffins, Martha Johnson, said, you know, it's about time you do a solo album and you should do something with the things you love to do. So I thought, well, I really like painting. I really like making music, and I like gardening. So I tried to blend those three things together. And yeah, it seems like an odd mix in some ways, at that point I had to think of what this album was all about and what kind of solo album did I want to do. And basically I chose a whole bunch of common plant names. I started researching common plant names and found about 30 of, really colorful, evocative names and went, okay, so what would these things sound like if they were instrumental tracks? And I kind of boiled it down to 11, 12, 13 names and just started working intuitively. And over that long period, sometimes it got shelved for long periods of time because there'd be Martha and the Muffins projects to do and a few live shows and reissues, and some health issues came in the way of that as well. So basically, the second year of COVID, I went, if I don't get this out, it's never going to happen. So I knuckled down, and I think it was 2022, I basically finished it. Then I sat on it for 2 years for no particular reason. It wasn't like I was worried about it. I had total confidence in what had been done. I was really happy with it. And then finally this spring I thought, well, it's just got to come out. And it, so that's when we released it in the spring. But it had been made, it basically mixed and mastered for 2 years prior to that.
Oh, fantastic.
I guess tell us a little bit more about how you found some of the plant names and how you ended up whittling it down.
Basically, I have because I'm an avid gardener, I have a lot of garden books. So I went through a lot of those just looking, but of course the internet was a great help too. And basically, common plant names, there can be the same name used in different countries for different plants.
Yeah.
So they're not an accurate description of a particular plant, because maybe in Turkey the same common name is used for a completely different plant than in the UK or wherever. But it was the interesting ones that I came across that really kind of triggered me in terms of doing soundscapes. And then I've been a big collector of sounds ever since you were able to buy fairly portable audio recorders. So back in the 80s, Sony came out with quite a decent cassette recorder, but it was all pro. It had a built-in limiter and a bunch of other features that made it better than just an average cassette recorder. And so I just started going out in the fields and recording wind and crickets. And, if Martha and I were working on a song for Martha and Muffins or one of her solo projects, and we came up with some cool sound but didn't know what to do with it, we would record it and just put it into this archive. So that's been going on for about 40 years. So when I got the common plant names all arranged, I started going into this archive and going, okay, so, what would Creeping Charlie sound like? What would Blue Mist sound like? And just started intuitively putting stuff together.
Oh, very good. Well, with gardening as the theme of your music, it's not common for artists to go to gardening for their inspiration for their new music, and we're seeing less and less artists use nature as their subject matter in pop culture and even non-pop culture music. But was the nature theme and gardening theme a natural one for you to progress to when it comes to new songwriting?
Well, in some ways, yes, because, for instance, both my parents were avid gardeners, so I grew up with it. And I think some of my earliest memories were, maybe being 4 or 5, peering down at flowers in the garden and being fascinated by what they looked like. And so it has a long timeline for me. And I guess when you decide to do a solo project, when you've been associated with a band for so long, the big question is, I could do anything. What should I do? And so maybe the whole gardening thing, and Martha had suggested it as part of, maybe doing a solo album. So it was a great suggestion, and it came naturally to me. So it seemed like a natural way to go. Although, of course, I could have done any number of other things. But you wake up one morning, you go, okay, I can't keep, dawdling. I've got to decide on something, and that's where I landed, in the garden.
Fantastic.
Well, it's a pretty neat concept. I guess you could call it a concept album of sorts. Can you talk a little bit about, as you're putting these tracks together, doing the various sampling, did you have trouble with walking away and saying, okay, that one's finished, or did you just keep tinkering with songs, or how did it work for you?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I think, the dilemma or the challenge for anybody writing any kind of music or doing any kind of art, like visual art or whatever, is when to stop. And I was doing experimental art and music well before Martha and the Muffins, because I went to the Art College of Ontario in Toronto, and I was exposed to a lot of things I'd never really been exposed to before. And we had an annual bus trip down to New York City every year. And so you go down there and see people like Laurie Anderson and Talking Heads, and there'd be all sorts of interesting stuff going on. And you'd come back with those influences. So I think at this point, because I've been doing this kind of music a long time, even though nobody knows that until now. I know when to stop, or I'd like to think I know when to stop. And so when you've got a lot of experience doing this kind of thing, and perhaps it isn't any different from doing a pop song, you go, okay, we've added enough, that's it. It seems fine the way it is. But that takes experience, I think, you know?
Very good.
Well, we have talked to a couple of artists that have done electronic sound, ambient sound type albums. And I believe you and Martha have worked with, you know, Canadian films and TV series music. But I mean, when I was listening to it, I could see something like this being, you know, easily adaptable to, you know, putting with, you know, TV or shows, or using ambient music in the background for stuff like that. Or have you done a lot of that kind of thing?
Well, there was a period during the 90s where we did a lot of film and television, but I guess what you're asking is whether any of this stuff from this album could be used that way.
Or future projects of that sort.
Yeah. I mean, I could hear, you know, certainly if I got some interest from filmmakers and I liked the project and I thought that the music would fit, I'd be happy to have this stuff put into a visual thing like film or a television series, but also, you know, future projects as well. And of course, there's a whole Martha and Muffins back catalog, and of course, a lot of people know about Echo Beach, but there are 11 other albums, and a lot of it is very sort of film soundtrack-like.
Yeah.
So, you know, from time to time, we have had sync placements that way, but probably not enough. I think there's a lot of our stuff, our album cuts, that would lend themselves to film really well.
Agreed. Well, you know, Bee Balm is my favorite track on Garden Music. Can you take us on the creative journey of making that song happen?
Sure. Well, that's an interesting choice because I've been working with a guy named Ray Dillard. Martha and I have been working for several years now with him. He's originally from Texas, but he lives in Toronto now and has for several years. And he helped mix. He had a lot to do with the mixing of this album. And he described that track as being, he said to me, that's like modern classical music. Like that's what modern classical music sounds like, because I think what you've picked of the whole album is the most orchestrated. It's the densest, and one of the densest ones, and it's very orchestrated. And the core track of that was a treated guitar pattern that I did years ago and never knew what to do with. It was probably 15, 20 years old, and it has this sort of glittery sound, and then I processed it more. It doesn't even sound like a guitar at this point. And somebody said they heard bee noises in there. I said, oh, it's probably that guitar. It's probably not. It wasn't a real bee recording. It's probably that guitar. But that served as the beginning of it. And then it was, well, how do I add to this? You know, what am I looking for? And I find it very useful to not overthink things, particularly with this kind of music. You don't want to get too obsessed with, or in a sense, too conscious about what you're doing. I think working on an intuitive level, you're kind of on a Zen plane, if you know what I mean. And you're thinking about it, but you're also thinking on a deeper, more subconscious level. And so I would go back into my sound library and go, well, what works with that glittery, clattery guitar? And I go, oh yeah, here's something that's really cool. We'll try it. And so a lot of it was trial and error. You know, some things didn't work, so I dumped them. Yeah. And I'd try something else, and it would work. And gradually, you know, that, as all the others were built into their final form. But that one is quite complicated. There's a lot going on there, and some people have said, you know, the great thing about this album is I can listen to it several times and still hear new things that I hadn't noticed before. That might be one of the tracks that's like that. I'm not sure whether it was Eric or Jeff who said it was B-bomb, but
it was Eric.
I'd be interested to. It was Eric. Okay,
yeah.
So Eric, did you find that? Like, did you hear new things, or is it just sort of like, oh, there's a lot going on? Because I'm always curious about feedback from people who've heard this stuff.
I'm very, very amateurish when I'm trying to describe why things catch my ear. I guess maybe the term of like it just does, but I'm always into big walls of sound with different types of eclectic sounds and just a lot of things going on. I've always been I've fantasized about music like that. And when I listened to B-Bomb, it kind of gave me that vibe to a certain degree. Am I totally off by saying that?
Not at all. And I understand the challenge of trying to describe words when the art form doesn't have words. It's like, I mean, the reverses of that is true too, where a lot of artists of various sorts find it very difficult to articulate their art because, if you're a painter, there's the painting. Why do I have to talk about it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the language. But no, you're right. I mean, it is kind of a wall of sound going on there, and there's a lot of things that are repeated, but not in a symmetrical way. They come and go, and things fade in and out. And I think one of the things that emerged when I was making this over this long period of time, and it wasn't planned at all, was every track except one, I think, has some sort of voice in it, or vocal, or it's not even necessarily human voices, but there's some kind of vocal going on. And that was just something that evolved over the process of making this. And in B-Bomb, for instance, there's that weird little high, strange voice, which I thought worked really well because I always imagined it as sort of the queen bee talking or something. I mean, it's kind of maybe too literal, but that when I heard that sound, I went, yeah, that's kind of bee-like. Like if a bee could talk, is this what the bee would sound like? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah. Well, I guess you'd kind of spoke about this early in the interview about finishing this album during the COVID pandemic, and I've asked this question to so many artists, even last week, artists. We've had a lot of artists that have recorded newer music during the pandemic and found a creative renaissance in writing and recording music. And then we've talked to many artists that had writer's block during COVID and just had a creative block altogether. For you, talk a little bit more about the COVID pandemic. Was it a creative renaissance for you, or was it a challenge?
I think the idea, in some ways, it appealed to me that we were locked down and you couldn't do all the things that a lot of people do all the time. When there was less air traffic for a while, I thought, wow, there's like no planes up in the air. That's kind of neat. It was almost like the earth took a breather. And I tend to be, at some points, very solitary anyway, so it didn't really bother me at all. I mean, I think people that like to go out and about and do a lot of stuff and like a lot of external stimuli, like they probably went crazy. But I've always kind of got a lot of my inspiration from inside. I have like a very strong internal world. And so being locked down and going down to the basement and working on this stuff until 1 or 2 in the morning was great. And somehow the COVID thing imposed a sort of discipline that, when you're not signed to a big record company, it's not like, oh, God, Mark, you've got to put out an album every year. That's the contract. Like you don't have deadlines. So in a way, the COVID thing created some sort of parameter that I had to work within, which I didn't mind at all.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah, another one I liked was Johnny Jump Up. Was there? Can you talk a little bit about that? That one had drums in it, did it not?
It had thinking about it now. It had a weird drum loop.
Yeah.
That was done in there's a good example of something that Martha and I recorded, I'm guessing around 85, 86, and never used.
Nice.
And again, like trolling through all this stuff, I went, and part of it is a loop of a recording we made of a David Letterman show. I have no idea who the guest was, but he was from the deep south, and he's going, yeah, went on and said that judge, and he's going on like that. And so Johnny Jump Up, it kind of, to me, and let me stress that my interpretations of this are by no means the interpretation.
Yeah.
And my interpretations shift from time to time, but for Johnny Jump Up strikes me as like some sort of late night talk show gone mad. You're like watching it and you're going, what is going on? Like, what is going? And that's the feeling I get. But I'd be interested again in what your feeling is, having listened to the track. Like, what do you feel is going on there?
Well, I got to be honest. It was like 4 days ago I listened to it, but I just remember the drum beat in the loop, and I think that caught my ear.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of maybe one of the more song-like structures on this album, because some of them are totally abstract.
Yeah.
And that one's more like a song. Yeah.
Well,
or song-like anyway.
And that is what's great about music, is you can have, people can have different interpretations of a song or a concept, and that's what's really neat about music.
Oh, for sure. And as a songwriter, I know Martha feels this way too. One of the greatest rewards of being a songwriter for us is hearing other people's interpretations or misinterpretations of our songs. And often that's like a lyric that they thought they heard, but it's right. Yeah. They tell us the wrong one, and it's great, right? I'm going, well, that's really cool.
Well, with Garden Music having such an eclectic sound, do you have any plans on supporting this album in a live capacity of any sorts?
Well, trying to reproduce it live would be almost impossible, because it was a studio album, completely done in a studio. However, one idea I've had, and I'm still kind of wondering whether this would be good or not, maybe you can give me your opinion, would be to have small, intimate listening sessions where it might be a small venue, and I invite everybody to bring a yoga mat, and we turn out all of the lights or have the lights dim, and we just lie down and listen to it. And after 40 minutes have passed, the lights go on, and you can have a Q&A and maybe buy the CD, or if I have any other merch at that point. And, we just talk about what we heard. And that could be, as I said, a small venue, or I could do maybe say, if you want me to come to your house, I can do that for a certain fee. And you can invite up to a certain number of people, and we'll do it there, which I think would be quite interesting. I mean, do you think that works as an idea?
Well, yeah, I do. In a very educational type of setting, I do. I really do.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see it as educational. And I think one of the instructions would be, it's okay if you fall asleep, because one of my closest friends did just that when he heard it for the first time. I said, let's lie down here. We're going to turn the lights down. And like halfway through it, he was snoring. And I said, that's okay. That's okay. You drift in and out, and maybe you're half awake, and it's even weirder than when you're fully awake. Who knows?
Well, I say that in regards to, as by my day job, I'm a public school teacher. So I always look at things especially when we're studying for interviews for this, I always am listening and writing my questions as I listen. And I'm just a big note taker, because that's, I went to college 100 years ago, and that's how I did it. I wanted to move on from garden music, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about your recent induction into the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame. Can you talk a little bit more about how and when you found out that you're being inducted?
Well, that was at least a year ago now, wasn't it? It kind of came out of nowhere, as I recall. It was just all of a sudden I got an email, and they said, you've been nominated, and we want to induct you, and, can you send us some background on the song and how you came about to write it? And it was quite a surreal evening because it was kind of divided by these people that were trying to break the mold, and I guess we were perceived as being part of that. And Van Brand 3000 was on it for Drinking in L.A., which is one of my favorite all-time pop songs.
Love that song.
And Snow was on it as well. And then there was, Mark, what's his name? Like, he's had a lot of huge, mainstream hits. Oh, God, I can't remember his last name. He's, way more famous than I am, so don't get mad at me, Mark. But, and so the evening was kind of split in half like that. Oh, and the Dream Warriors were on as well. So we had a great time backstage because all these people were really cool. All of the songs were great, and, it was a great evening that way. But I was asked by the interviewer during the evening how I felt about getting this, and I said, well, it's a real surprise to me because that period of Canadian music is very underknown, and the period before it, like the Neil Youngs and Joni Mitchells and everybody who fled Canada and went to California, got really huge, and then there was sort of like the new wave punk thing in Canada, which I think had a way more limited exposure worldwide. And then right after that, during the 90s, a number of Canadian bands, and into from the 90s on, you had huge superstars like Drake. And so I said, it's a very understudied period of Canadian music. So I'm pleased to have got it, but I'm surprised.
Oh, well, we've talked to a number of artists that have been inducted in the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame. When the opportunity comes and you're presented the induction, I'm always curious to know: do they wine you? Do they dine you? Is there an after party after the festivities are done? What all takes place?
Well, it's not nearly that exciting, I'm afraid. I think there's budget restrictions, so everybody shows up before, and you get a rundown on how the show. The showrunner tells you how it's going to happen and what order people are going to go on, and all these things are very tightly scripted. And then the show happens, and afterwards everybody's hanging out backstage, and then everybody goes home, unless I'm missing something. Maybe I missed the crazy party and the orgy or whatever. But that's how it seemed to happen. So it was a kind of a surreal evening. Interesting because of the wide variety of artists. And, but yeah, it wasn't like Hollywood where, now we're going to, Drake's mansion to party down or anything. Yeah. Anyway, not that I knew of anyway.
Fair enough.
I could be out of it. Who knows?
Well, yeah, earlier you mentioned working on reissues for Martha and the Muffins. Can you talk a little bit about, I know one of the more recent ones was Marthology, the in and outtakes, came out in 21. Is there a story behind, putting that together?
For sure. Yeah, there was. Our manager, Graham Stairs, has been bugging us for years about putting out sort of the songs that never made it onto a full album or got a limited release or were never released at all. And so we had a lot of that stuff, which if you've heard Marthology is on there. A lot of it some of it was demo tapes. Some of it was things that had a very limited release on the internet, for example. Some of it were half-finished songs. So there's a very eclectic range of things there. But one thing that struck me when Martha and I compiled it was I think that for me, some of Martha's strongest vocals were on some of those cuts. And I'm thinking in particular of a song called Talking Through My Hat, which kind of got demoed and didn't end up on an album. But her singing's great on that. I mean, her singing's great on all of it. But, you know, there were some kind of standout tracks that I thought were worth, you know, putting out to the public. And I'm really glad we did, because I think we would listen to some of those things over the years and go, hey, why didn't we ever put this out? Or, you know, should we be developing it further? But we didn't, you know, we just basically put everything out as it was done, except maybe Act Like a Woman, which Martha added some vocals to. But everything else was just, yeah, here it was. This is the song we did in our bedroom in Bath in, you know, 1988, and so on and so forth.
Nice.
Well, The World is a Ball by Martha and the Muffins is an album that flew under the radar for some reason. I do not know why. That album, it kind of takes me back to my high school years.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that album and why did it fly under the radar?
Well, there's many reasons why things go under the radar, for sure. I mean, we always felt that when we were with big labels, we were naive in believing that if you did your end of the bargain, they would do theirs. And it's not really true, and it's not really true for various reasons. That was the most expensive album we ever did. It was insane. And it was probably an album that didn't sound like any of our previous albums, probably largely due to the production of David Lord, who'd worked with Peter Gabriel and XTC and a number of artists. So we had done, previous to that, we'd done 3 albums with Daniel Lanois, and his career was starting to get big, and he was starting to take off. And so when it came to the next album, he said, you know, I think he was working on Peter Gabriel's album, which would turn out to be So. And he said, you know, I can't do it. And he said, you know, I can't do it now. But I think you guys are ready to produce your own albums. And Martha and I didn't feel ready at all, even though we probably could have. And maybe we were ready, but we didn't feel that way. And so we started looking around for another producer, and there was, you know, we were listening to various tracks produced by various people, and one track we really liked was called "Wake Up" by XTC, and it was done by David Lord. He did that album, which I think was called "The Beta Wheel." It had a steam locomotive wheel on the cover, and we really liked that. So we contacted him, and he was into it, and basically we did some of it at the studio north of Montreal, the bed tracks, and then we went over to Bath, England, and spent, I don't know, 2 or 3 months doing it. And we were with Current Records, who was distributed by RCA at that time. And RCA kept going, so how long are you guys going to be there? Like, it's been 3 months, and, you know, there was going to be no end in sight. And it finally got done, and then for some reason, even though we thought there was some really good singles on it, because that's, you know, that was sort of what people did at the time. You know, we had a few singles like Song in My Head, but there was a general feeling that there weren't enough singles, so we went back and did another one, which in retrospect we regret now, because I don't think it's a very good song. But and then, you know, we gave it to them, and they didn't really do a lot with it, you know, and I don't know, like on our YouTube site, there's a lot of comments like, why did the song never go huge, you know, because it sounded like a huge hit. And it's a partnership between the artist and the label, and often one or the other doesn't hold up their end of the bargain. You know?
Yeah.
Well, I love Stuck on the Grid. I absolutely love that track. Do you do you have any recollections, or can you remember a whole lot about recording that song?
Yes. Well, when we did World is a Ball, by that time we had a home studio. And so we did all these demos for that album in the basement of our rented house on Albany Avenue in Toronto in the Annex. And we had our own 8-track tape deck, which was really good. It was actually made really nice recordings. And Stuck on the Grid started out as a loop. It was like a treated DX7 synthesizer loop. And that's what we based the whole song around. And then when we got Yogi Horton, the fabulous drummer from New York, and Tinker Barfield from New York also, which were a killer rhythm section. We used them on black stations, white stations on the previous album and other cuts. And so we got them in again when we went up to Morin Heights in Montreal. And they laid down this killer groove, and we just started adding stuff to that. And it's interesting you mentioned that one, because I should say that on our YouTube site, we've been putting out, so far we've done 2 series of our darker songs called Happy Dystopia 2025, in recognition that the world is really fucked up right now, and we're all moving in the wrong direction. And so we went, okay, let's collect all our darker songs and go, hey, if you're feeling bad now, let's push that, listen to these songs. And don't jump the gun. I think we were thinking of starting episode 3, which isn't out yet. We just released episode 2. But that could be a great beginning of this playlist, these playlists that we're putting out. Hey. So it's interesting you mentioned that, because I think that's one of our favorites too.
Love that song.
That's kind of a cool new trend. I've seen some bands do that, where they'll instead of coming out with like a greatest hits album or something, they'll take tracks and make like a theme and put out like a playlist of workout songs or I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that works well for us because so many of our songs are underknown.
Yeah.
Like we have all the Echo Beach fans, which is great, and they have kept us alive and allowed us to do all the other things that we've done. But then there's the Martha Muffins super fans that know every album. Yeah. And, as was mentioned, they go, oh yeah, Stuck on the Grid is my favorite song or off that album. And I go, oh, okay. That sort of indicates somebody that's gone beyond the singles, right? But I think in doing these sort of playlists, like, it just came up like after Trump got reelected, I just went, yeah, we got to start putting out the dark side of Martha's Muffins. And, and we have, as it turned out, because we started listening to all the albums, we go, okay, this song. We have a lot of dark songs, and I think you would probably agree that Stuck on the Grid is a pretty dark song, certainly lyrically, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, Mark, we're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
Let me think. Well, certainly garden music is the latest thing, but I should mention before I go that we are working on putting out a Live at Ontario Place 1983 concert album that never got released. It was recorded by Dan Lanois. We played in front of 10,000 people at the Forum at Ontario Place in Toronto, and it is killer, if I say so myself. That band was at its peak, and so that's what we're working on now.
Fantastic. Well, this is how things are going to work out. Once Jeff, the editing wizard over here, gets everything cleaned up, we'll get it all polished up, sent to you and your publicist, and if you could, please share it on all of your social medias.
Be glad to, and thanks so much for the support.
Oh, we're excited to have you on here tonight.
Yeah,
Mark,
thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
all right,
I can't wait to hear that live album.
Absolutely. So we'll be in touch. Yeah, I'll talk to you then. Sound good?
Yes, great.
All
Thanks
right.
so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Everybody hides at home inside their nest of snakes. Everybody grinds the stone and makes their own mistakes. Hide in the headlights, fight the grip of fear. You can make your dreams come true, but you just can't do it here. Hey! Everybody eyes the gun and screams inside their head. Everybody bites their tongue and pays their bills instead. Hide in the spotlights, fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey! Roll the dice. Take your chances. Everybody knows the game is fixed, there is no prize. Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbye.